Hey Preds Nation, Johnny here, and here with another off-season Nashville Predators video. Seeing as the Preds are hosting the NHL entry draft on June 28th and June 29th live from Bridgestone Arena, and seeing as today is June 26th, 2023, I thought it would be fun to look back 25 years ago, way back on June 26th, 1998, and see with memory serves to see how many of the players the Preds took in their very own NHL expansion draft. Now, as we remember, the rules were a lot tougher back then for new teams joining the league. There was already 26 teams in the NHL, and they didn't want a team from Nashville coming in and being competitive right away. Not like the easy rules that Vegas and Seattle have. But we're not here to debate that. I want to have some fun and look back and see how many of the 26 players, one from every established team I can think of, that the Preds selected. Now, as many of you may remember, not all these 26 players would suit up for the Preds in the fall of 1998 for the 1998-99 season. Some returned to their former team that the Preds took them from because some were unrestricted free agents. But the Preds got compensation in that instance. Some players that the Preds selected were then swapped to other teams for players that general manager David Poile thought would best improve his team for their expansion season. But for now, let's just have some fun. Let's have some organization to this so you don't think I'm just memorizing players off the top of my head. We'll go by the structure that the league was with the divisional alignment at the time, and we'll shoot around Canada and the US. We'll start in the Western Conference in the Northwest Division. Here we go. From the Vancouver Canucks, the Preds selected Scott Walker. From the Edmonton Oilers, the Preds selected Doug Friedman. From the Calgary Flames, the Preds selected Joe Bouchard. From the Colorado Avalanche, the Preds selected Uwe Krupp. Shooting over to the Pacific Division, from the San Jose Sharks, the Preds selected Al Ifredi. From the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim, as they were called at the time, the Preds selected Mikhail Skolenkov. From the Los Angeles Kings, the Preds selected Frederick Chabot. From the Phoenix Coyotes, the Preds selected John Slaney. From the Dallas Stars, the Preds selected Patrick Cote. Moving over to the Central Division, the division the Preds would be playing in for their first few seasons, from their divisional rivals to be, the Preds selected Blair Atchingham from the St. Louis Blues. From the Chicago Blackhawks, the Preds selected future Preds captain Greg Johnson. From the Detroit Red Wings, the Preds selected Doug Brown. Moving over to the Eastern Conference, let's start in the Northeast Division. From the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Preds selected Rob Zettler. From the Ottawa Senators, the Preds selected Denny Lambert. From the Montreal Canadiens, the Preds selected the goalie who would eventually lead them to their first playoff appearance 6 seasons in. The Preds selected Thomas Vukun. From the Buffalo Sabres, the Preds selected the boogeyman, Bob Boughner. From the Boston Bruins, the Preds selected Mike Sullivan. Yes, that Mike Sullivan, who is now head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins, but we'll get to that team too. Moving to the Atlantic Division, from the New Jersey Devils, the goalie who would suit up as starting goalie the Preds opening night at what was then Nashville Arena, the Preds selected Mike Dunham. From the New York Rangers, the Preds selected Mike Richter. From the New York Islanders, the Preds selected J.J. Daigneault. From the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Preds selected Tony Herkis. From the Philadelphia Flyers, the Preds selected Craig Darby. Moving over to the Southeast Division, from the team that he was formerly the general manager of, the Washington Capitals, the Preds selected the player who would go on to score the first NHL goal in franchise history in the second game of the season, the man who is now signed and will be behind the bench as head coach this fall inside Bridgestone Arena. The Preds selected Andrew Burnett. From the Carolina Hurricanes, the Preds selected Jeff Daniels. No, not the actor Jeff Daniels. From the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Preds selected Paul Burasau. And finally, from the Florida Panthers, the Preds selected Chris Armstrong. So that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching as always. I hope you guys all had fun looking back on the Preds' first step into joining the NHL 25 years ago. Click like if you really liked this video. Click subscribe if you really liked it. You can find my social media as always by clicking on the channel name. Tell all your friends about Redemption and tell all of Preds Nation that you know that in 2 more sleeps, the Preds host the NHL entry draft.